Hey guys, it's May May, and today on our basic series we're talking paper. I'm going to start with my lightest paper and work my way to the heaviest, and we're going to talk about what I use each one of them for. So let's get started. This paper would have to be the lightest paper I have in my stash, and it is known as vellum. And can you see how it's just a little bit sturdier than tissue paper? Now, I'm not pulling out tissue paper because I think everybody understands what you use tissue paper for, and it's not really for card making or paper projects. So I'm just going to show you actual card making or scrapbooking type papers, okay? So this is vellum. Now, the thing about vellum is glue shows through it. So if you're going to adhere it to something, you have to be kind of strategic about where you place your glue. So sometimes you might want to have to take this and make it a little bigger than your project and tuck it around to glue it in, because anything you put behind it is going to show through. Now this is a printed piece and it's printed with foil. So that helps somewhat to hide what's behind it, but still it does not hide. So if you're using vellum, just remember that this is not a base for a project. This is going to be something you create an embellishment for, or a strip, or a punch out, or something just to kind of show this paper off. But it would not be a good base for a project. Now let's talk paper, just plain old printer style paper. This is what this is, and it's actually a pack of colored paper that I picked up. This is something that is just like your copy paper or your printer paper that you're going to run through your printer. Now the ways that I would use something like this, a lot of times if I'm making a card, I may use this as a mat to go on the card if I'm trying to cut out weight. Or if I want to print something, if I want to make my own background, then this is a good way to do it because this will run through my printer really easily. Now this is not something you're going to use to be a card base or a scrapbook page base. It does not have enough body to hold up on its own and hold any embellishments that you might put on it. But there are places to use it. Let me show you an example. In this little bag, which I will link below the videos for all the little projects I'm going to show you. This little bag I made from a lightweight cardstock. Because I had a strong base, I was able to use a simple paper on top. It kept the weight down, and it was also less expensive than using cardstock on top of cardstock for something like this. So if you're going to use paper, you need to have something to support it. I suggest cardstock or anything stronger than that. But this is a good way to use paper. In these sentiment areas, another good way. If you want to print out some of your sentiments, you can always do that with your printer or your lightweight color paper, and then just support it with a cardstock backing, and that way it has some extra body to it. Working our way up the scale again. This is a 65-pound cardstock as well as this one. What's interesting is you may think that it's very, very thin, but it is a decent size for card making. It's not the best, but it's a good, decent size. This is this 65-pound paper, and I want to show you the bend that it has to it. Most of the time in my card making, I use a 65-pound paper. Some people will use a stronger paper. I want to mention that Stampin' Up's paper, from what I could tell, is 80 pounds, so it's a little stronger than this, and that would probably be another great option for card making. Now, I showed you this one. Let me show you this one. This one fooled me because I thought this was a pack of printer paper, but it's not. It's actually 65-pound cardstock. So it's slightly heavier than my printer paper, but I will be able to run this through my printer because it's 8.5 by 11 and it's got a pattern to it. Now, where would I use something like this? Let me show you. This little guy. I made this with the intentions of giving this to some kids as Easter treats. And you know what I know about kids? They're not going to save this for the future. They're going to rip into it. They're not going to untie it. All they want is the candy treat inside. So instead of using some of my expensive, more heavyweight cardstocks, I just grabbed this lighter weight cardstock and made this little Easter bunny for them. So this is a good place to use this for card bases, because it doesn't weigh a whole lot, and for something that you don't mind if they're going to rip and tear, and it won't be something they have forever. Working our way up one more time, this is 110-pound cardstock. I don't have an 80-pound in my stash. If I did, I'd show you, but this is 110-pound. Let me show you how this one feels. You see the difference? Here's the 65, and I cannot even get it to separate on me. This is 65. This is 110. See the thickness? If you're using a 110 cardstock, it does a couple of things. One, it embosses beautifully. So if you wanted to do something that was maybe white on white or color on color and you wanted to emboss, this is a beautiful cardstock for that. You might have to run it through your machine twice, but it's just so rich. The other thing is, if you want your cards to feel rich and elegant, this is a beautiful base to use. It takes stamping well. It is not a watercolor paper. That's a whole different kind of paper. So just because this one feels thick, it doesn't mean it's going to accept watercolor like watercolor paper does. Let me show you a place I might use something like this. I would certainly use it to make one of these stationery holders. Now, I did not have a 110-pound cardstock to make this stationery holder with. So what I did was I took 2 pieces of 65-pound cardstock and I glued them back to back, and that's what gave me the double-sided. I will link the video for this below. If you have a 110-pound cardstock, this is a great place to use it for your heavier and projects you want to live for a long time. Now let's talk about chipboard. Chipboard in itself has multiple weights. If you've ever noticed that your cardstock packs have a chipboard backing, it's a thinner chipboard, something like this. But you can buy chipboard that is so thick it hardly even bends. This is also chipboard. The way you choose your chipboard is based on the project. Let me show you some examples. This is a little mini album that I made using some very heavy chipboard I had in my stash. You can see, and I'll tap it, that this is very sturdy and very strong. I needed that because I wanted that to be strong enough to last for a long time through lots of wear and tear. Now I coated it in just lightweight cardstock. All these are just lightweight cardstocks that are glued on top. But because I wanted this to be sturdy and strong, I used the heavier chipboard that I could find. This is just cardstock that makes this little album. If you're interested in seeing this project, it'll be linked below. Now, my friend Jane, who's doing this series with me, she makes these little books, which I just love. She sent me this one, and I haven't had the heart to write in it. I know she sent it to me to use it, but I just want to keep it. Don't we always do that? Anyway, her covers are very thick chipboard. The other thing that she probably loves me tapping, hitting her artwork. So this very thick chipboard. This is something that will hold up for a long time if you want to carry this in your purse or in your briefcase or throw it into, you know, a suitcase or something. This is something that's going to hold up and protect its contents. Now again, she's covered it in a lighter weight cardstock here and a cardstock that she designed herself with paints and stencils, and it has a coating on it. So it makes this super strong. So it's chipboard sandwiched in cardstock. So this is another way to use a good sturdy chipboard. Now you could use plain paper inside of here. She used a lightweight cardstock, which is perfect. But if you wanted to, this is another place to use those lightweight papers. Now really quickly, I want to talk to you about sizes of paper. Your size of your paper is going to matter depending on your project. If you're making a full-size scrapbook page for a classic scrapbook album, that's a 12 by 12 piece of paper. These packs can be found all over the place. If you're doing something with photos or anything you want to last a long time and be archival safe, please make sure that the paper you use says acid and lignin free. That's very important. Otherwise, your project can yellow, or the pictures can fade and yellow and start to blur into your paper. Now, 12 by 12 is beautiful paper, and you might have seen 6 by 6 pads and think, ooh, I love the 6 by 6 pad, but I can just take my 12 by 12s and cut them down and get the same effect. You can, but only where size is concerned. Let me show you what I mean. As a whole, 6 by 6 papers are not just 12 by 12s cut down. They're actually 6 by 6 papers that are sized down so that the images work on a smaller project. So it's not just this pack cut into 4 and turned into album or turned into packs. It's literally paper that has been designed to be 6 by 6. This is something that card makers are using a lot now because it really works well for card making, and it's plenty of paper for that. The same holds true for 8 by 8 papers. These papers, although they're 8 by 8, the images are sized down to fit this 8 by 8 paper. So 12 by 12, 8 by 8, 6 by 6, and there's still one more size I want to talk to you about, and that is 8.5 by 11. There's several things I love about 8.5 by 11 paper and cardstock. One is, I know if I cut this in half long ways or width-wise, this is an A2 size card base. I know that instantly. The other thing I love is if I want to run this through my printer, there's no cutting down or fidgeting or working with it. It'll simply run through my printer and I don't have to do anything special. So depending on the project that you're working on, that will decide the size of paper you need. Now, I just brought these simple papers back over because I want to talk to you a little bit about medias, using different medias on your paper. If you're a stamper and you're going to stamp on paper, the paper is not as important as the style of ink you use. So don't worry too much about which paper you're going to be stamping on if it works for your project itself. Worry about the ink you're going to use on that paper. And that's a whole different video, which we will get to. The next thing I want to talk to you about is if you want to do watercoloring. You've probably seen lately that watercoloring is getting huge, and this paper is a whole different kind of paper unto itself. The fibers are made in such a way that they can control and handle watercolor in a way cardstock just can't. So if you're wanting to try some of these projects that you're seeing with the beautiful smearing and bleeding and running of the colors, watercolor paper is going to give you a better result. Now, I have videos where I have done it with regular cardstock, and there are ways to get around it. But if you want that actual watercolor effect, use watercolor paper. It's also beautiful paper in itself as it's thick and it tears beautifully. So that's another option for your card making and your projects is watercolor paper. By the way, this one is 90 pounds. Watercolor comes in different sizes and different pounds as well, so you have to find the one that works best for you. So what are my top paper tips? It's very simple. Let your paper match the project you're making. If you're making a mini album that you want to hold up for a very long time, remember that cover needs to be sturdy. So consider something like chipboard or very, very heavy cardstock. If you're making a giveaway that you just want to give to the kids and let them rip into it, think about some less expensive colored paper or cardstock. Don't spend a fortune because they're going to rip into it, right? Something like this, that the weight comes from the bag itself or from the 3D project, you can take your papers and use them on there and not have to use your cardstocks. So that's a good way to use paper. If you're going to use something you want to hold up for a long time, think sturdy. Always think about the project itself when choosing your paper. Where cards are concerned, you want a nice strong base and you want your mats to weigh less so it doesn't add as much weight to your shipping. Always think like that. A good sturdy base and lighter products on top so that it doesn't weigh it down. I hope this helped you some with paper. Paper is kind of one of those things that, again, it's kind of a feel thing for you. It's kind of what you want and how you want it. Some people have a certain cardstock they use for card making and some just use whatever they've got. Me, I use whatever I've got. Also, you may find that there's a cardstock that works really well in your electronic cutting machine, and you may just say, I'm just going to use this cardstock for all my projects and not buy a different one for every single thing out there. That's fine. If you have one cardstock you love, use it. Okay? If you have paper questions, leave them below. I'm always in the comments. I work very hard to answer every single comment that you guys send me, whether it's a question or not. I just love to communicate with you guys. So if you have any questions, leave them below. And your secret letter for today is I, as in igloo. Now on Thursday, Jane will be going over the basics of embossing. Not wet embossing, not heat embossing, but dry embossing. So check that out. The link to her channel will be below, as well as a link to all the videos showing these projects as well. Alright guys, thanks for joining me today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow as we continue our Christmas in July series and make Christmas cards from our big book of holiday crafts. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.